All right, good afternoon. Thank you all so much for joining us. Today, we're going to be discussing the Huff Family Fund grants, and I am the new Executive Director for the County Foundation. My name is Dominique Jones, and I'm happy to guide you through this. There will be opportunities to ask questions in the Q&A box, which is just at the bottom of your screen, and I'm just going to add my email address here into the chat box, just in case if there's any specific questions about your particular project. I would be happy to arrange a time to chat with you over the phone or do a quick Zoom to go into more detail there. So I've added that to the chat box, which is ED for Executive Director, ed@thecountyfoundation.ca. Before we get started, I will let everybody know that this webinar is being recorded for those of you that are unable to attend during the 1 o'clock hour on a Wednesday afternoon, and we will be sharing this through our website and social media channels. Before we get actually into the presentation, I just wanted to share a quick poll and ask the group if you have applied for the Huff Fund grants before, just so that I can get an idea of if we have people who are new to the process or if we have seasoned organizations that have applied for Huff grants in the past. So I'm going to give that a couple of seconds to get everybody to respond, and then we'll share the outcome of that. Okay, great. Thank you very much for answering that question. It appears that approximately 67% of our attendees today are new to the Huff Family Fund grant application process. So that's fantastic. Thank you for joining us. I hope that I can answer your questions to the best of my ability, but like I said, any specific details, we can arrange a one-on-one. All right, so let's get straight to it, shall we? I'm going to share a couple of slides for us to go through for the Huff Family Fund. So here we are. We're here to discuss the grant application and learn more about the actual fund itself. So this is all about the Huff Family Fund, established in 2017 and going on its 5th year, which is absolutely wonderful for our community. So here's a quick overview of our agenda and what we will be discussing today. We're going to acknowledge the land that we get to work and live on, and then we'll dive right into what the Huff Family Fund is, how to determine if you're eligible, an application overview, so what is included there. And I often get asked, how do I create a strong grant application? So I'm going to cover that quickly here too in today's presentation. Timelines, and then we'll have an opportunity for questions and answers. So I will just reiterate that you can go ahead and type your question in the Q&A box. And if Anne is available to answer that on the spot, she will do so. If it makes more sense for us to cover it at the end of the presentation for everyone's benefit, then we will go ahead and do that. All right. So I'd like to start by acknowledging that the County Foundation does its work in and from the traditional territory of the Huron-Wendat, the Anishinaabe, and the Haudenosaunee peoples. These peoples agreed to mutual sharing obligations and responsibilities of stewards of the land and water. We recognize that these are now our shared obligations, working in partnership with our current neighbors, the Mohawk Bay of Quinte peoples. All right. So what is the Huff Family Fund? If I were to sum it up in a sentence, the Huff Family Fund is a commitment to the future of Prince Edward County. The Huff Family Fund supports programs with a focus in a wide range of areas, but including and not limited to addiction and mental health, animal welfare, arts and culture, healthcare and human services, housing, and vital signs priority areas, which may include education and learning, food security, and transportation. For those of you who are unaware of what Vital Signs is or how to get that information, Vital Signs is a collection of data that the County Foundation compiles in a variety of ways, either in the form of a report or also we have a data bank to easily access that information. It's available on our website for free use towards grant applications like this, just for general know-how and for other funding opportunities. I will let everybody know that we do have a new Vital Signs report that will be coming out tomorrow, and that will be available on our website, probably end of day tomorrow, if not Friday. And if you would prefer a print copy, they can be picked up at the any of the Prince Edward County Library branches. So the Huff Family Fund is a matching grant. So what does that mean? That means that whatever you ask for in terms of dollars in your application, you need to be able to prove that you can match that either with dollars or with volunteer hours. So if you're applying for $5,000, for example, you're going to need to show that you either have $5,000 in matching funds to contribute to that project or the equivalent of volunteer hours to match that. So in this particular example of $5,000, this would mean that your overall project size would be $10,000, either in an actual dollar-to-dollar ratio or volunteer time. So all of that must be verified and attached to your application form, and we'll go into more detail on what that looks like. Eligibility. How do I know if I'm eligible for this fund? So to apply for the Huff Family Fund, you must be a qualified donee as defined by the Income Tax Act, or you'll be working in partnership with a qualified donee, under which funds will flow and the project will be managed. Qualified donees, examples of that could be registered charities, municipalities, schools, or universities. The important part here for eligibility, and it's pretty broad, is that the project and the organization must support the citizens of Prince Edward County. Okay, so whatever project that you're going into, the organization itself, services that you provide, it's important that it affects our community, and that's what the dollars are going to be going towards. What's an eligible project? So eligible projects, this could be an expansion of a service or maybe a creation of new programming that you're going to be offering, and it might allow for your organization to do more for the target group that you work for. An eligible project could be inputs to allow your projects to continue to serve the community. So an example of this that's listed is purchasing animal food to improve animal welfare for an already existing program. This might be fostering, for example, or supporting cooking classes for a vulnerable sector. Your project could also be one that educates and supports sectors of the community in need. So the education piece towards the future, very important. Evaluation of an existing project to position further funding possibilities. So again, this strengthens your organization towards sustainability and accessing other dollars. So that would be an eligible project. Small capital projects may be improvements to your building or organization itself to better serve your target group. And then I'll just highlight at the bottom here, we do include ongoing operational costs in unique and certain circumstances. So that might be something that has arisen because of COVID or something that's unforeseen. I do like to stress that supporting operations is not something that typically is eligible for a grant application, because grants are typically going towards new projects or fulfilling other projects, not paying the rent or paying for salaries or wages for your day-to-day operations. But I will note here that it is included for special circumstances. So if there's something unforeseen that created this, that may be an eligible project. So I do have that listed here, and happy to discuss the particulars if there is a certain situation that applies to you and your organization. We'll briefly go over what's included in the application. It's all available on our website, either to apply online or it can be printed and filled out manually if you prefer. So the first section is going to detail the qualified donee. And this is important because we can only issue a grant in this circumstance to a qualified donee, which, as we mentioned earlier, would be a charity or a university or college or municipality. So you want to either make sure that you're a qualified donee or that you're working in partnership with one and that they're the lead applicant here. Mailing address, accuracy is important here. If you're successful, this is where the funds are going. Okay, so we want to make sure that it's going to the right place. We've had instances in the past where people have accidentally put in an old address, just automatically typing it in and not thinking. And we don't want funds to go to someplace where you are not. So make sure that that is accurate. Project description, go over exactly what you're looking to do. What is the project? Areas of interest, these are actually check boxes. So whether this applies to animal welfare or to food security or health, you're going to tick off the most applicable areas to your project. And how will the Huff Family Fund grant help you? So you're going to detail here, what difference is this grant going to make to your organization and the project? Community need, and I have in here in brackets, it's helpful to have stats and data to back this up. So I would recommend taking a look at our vital signs reports or data bank. You are more than welcome to access that information for free through our website and use that to help your application. But you're also welcome to use other data points or references that'll help emphasize what the community need is. The reason why I put that in here is it's easy to say anecdotally what the community need is. Like I might think this is what's important to me and I see it as a need. But just remember that everybody has those feelings and everybody has areas of interest that they think are the most important ones. So that's why it's very valuable to have data to back up what you're saying in the project that you're working on. A schedule and timeline. So just outline, when is this project going to come into fruition? How is that going to play out? And when is it going to be wrapped up? You'll want to detail what the objectives are of your project. So what's the goal here? How are you going to recognize the Huff Fund? And there are some different ways to do that we can explore. You'll upload a budget, and this doesn't have to be anything fancy. There's no set format for it. So just whatever's going to work for your particular project and organization. An Excel sheet is perfectly fine. That's definitely adequate. You'll just detail what the expenses are of the project and the anticipated income or revenue to offset that. And for financial statements, unaudited is definitely fine to submit for this. Now, I often get asked, how do I create a strong grant application? And I just have a few quick pointers here. One is clarity, and it seems really simple, but it's on here for a reason. So does your application clearly state who you are, like who the organization is, what your project is, and how it relates to the focus or focuses of the Huff Family Fund? I like to say here, make sure that somebody who doesn't know anything about your organization or project can clearly understand what you're trying to say, and even have a friend or a family member that's not involved in your organization to give it a once over to see if it makes sense to them. It's very easy when you're involved in a project or you're heavily in with an organization to just scan things quickly and think that it makes perfect sense. But if you're not in that world, it may not. So make sure that it's clear. The second thing is realistic requests. So frame your application around funds that you need for that particular project and the matching funds or hours that you have available, rather than just applying for the max amount and just to see where you're going to get. Because if you think about it, we only have $125,000 worth of funds. And if we have a lot of people applying and they're all applying for the max amount just to see where they land, it makes it very difficult on an adjudication standpoint, because then we have to take that information and see, if we need to cut down a project, what would still make it viable. And we just don't have that information necessarily in front of us. So it's best to make a realistic request. What do you actually need and what are you looking for? You'll have a higher chance of success that way instead of just applying for the max amount and see what happens. Relevance. Make sure that your application relates back to the focus of the fund. And again, this is pretty broad and generic, so there's lots of different options there, but you have to see the synergy. So why did you apply for this fund? Why is it a good fit? And tie that back in. But like I said, there's lots of different areas of focus, so that's not too difficult. So just make sure that that's included. Timelines. So our applications are due Friday, October 14th at noon. Unfortunately, we can't accept any late submissions because that's unfair to people that submitted on time. And it also delays the back end process of deciding who's accepted and going through that side of things. So make sure that they are on time. You can submit online. Just by filling out and clicking the submit button, you'll receive an email confirmation that we do have it. Or you can print the application and fill it out by hand. That can then be sent to me via email if you have the capability to scan and send that in, or we can arrange to make sure that it's dropped off at our office, which is 35 Bridge Street, Unit 107 in Picton. So you've applied, now what? When are you going to hear back? Applicants will be notified of the outcome of their application in November. And if you're approved, funding will follow in December. I will highlight here that whether you're approved or declined, you will hear back from me. If you are declined, we will discuss why that was, how to strengthen applications in future, and other options that might be available to help with your funding requests. So we're not going to leave you high and dry if you are unsuccessful. Okay. So that was a fast and furious drive through the Huff Family Fund, and we're going to move on to questions and hopefully answers if I can provide them. So I'm just taking a look at a couple of questions that we have here. And one is related to volunteer hours. How do I quantify that in my application? Great question. So the way to do that is to look at the project that you're applying for, whatever it is. Let's say, I'll just think of a random example here. If you were doing a spay and neuter clinic, and that was going to be run for 2 weeks for a total of 100 hours. So 100 hours is your volunteer time. Then you want to basically add in a quantifying feature of how much is that hourly time worth for the type of work that's being done and in that industry. So whatever that equals out to, let's say it's $25, and then that'll equal what the value of your volunteer time is. So if you had to pay somebody to do the work that your volunteers are, how would you hash that out? And that's the value of your volunteer time. But good question. Okay, we have another question around, does it make sense to split that up, or can we show volunteer time and matching dollars? The answer is yes, absolutely. So if you have half and half, let's say, that would be great. You can show evidence of that, and actually it looks good from a adjudication standpoint, because it shows that you've got the volunteer force to deliver the program or the service or whatever it is, and you've also got other funding that's going to help support it. So you can absolutely do that. Okay, how will we show recognition for the Huff Family Fund? Good question. There are a few different ways there's lots of different ways to do this, and we're open to any and all creative thoughts. But a couple of examples could be display the logo on your website, maybe under a detail of the project that you have. If it's something that requires people to be on site, let's say it's a festival or an event, for example, then maybe you would want to showcase a banner displaying the Huff Family Fund logo. or something like that. And then another example could be by sharing it through social media or other forms of advertising, just making sure that there's recognition tied in there for the Huff Family Fund. So there's many different ways to do it. Those are just a couple of ideas or examples, but just whatever makes most sense for your type of project and organization. There's different ways to do it. There's not one set way, and they're happy to see recognition in different forms. Okay, there's a couple of questions here about whether it makes sense to apply for part of a project or the full project, what that might look like. It's hard to answer without knowing the particulars, but and we can chat about that if you'd like. Just send me an email and we'll arrange a time. But in general, the way that I like to think about it is, you've seen the advertisement for the Huff Family Fund. You know that it's a maximum of $20,000. So there was an idea that struck you of, this funding will go towards X, or it's going to support this part of the project. So typically your gut's kind of right when it comes to that. But yeah, if you want more detail or just my opinion on what might be more successful, I would advise that we just have a quick call to chat about it and see what might make the most sense in this circumstance. Great. Alrighty. I think that is everybody's questions for today. Should anything else come up, please send me a note, and I will do my best to get back to you as quickly as possible to resolve that information. I thank everybody for taking time out of their busy day to attend today's webinar to learn more about the Huff Family Fund. And I'm excited that the majority of you have not applied before. And I look forward to hearing more details about your projects, your plans, your organization, and see how the Huff Family Fund grant opportunity can hopefully move that along. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Bye now.